A bonus O Canada baby presented by CIBC. Look at this. Who would have thought? Congratulations to Derek Cornelius, who will be joining Ismail Kone, the Canadian contingent at Marseille. Cornelius did it the long way. He was with the Whitecaps, went to Greece, went to Sweden, now lands with the French Giants. Marseille is a big club. He's playing under a big manager with Roberto De Zerbi as well. Well done to Derek. We're really proud of him. You know, with him and Kone going to Marseille and Bear going to Auxerre, like the French league, man, it's been a good place for Canadians, and it looks to be a good place moving forward as well. You got to give a player like Cornelius lots of credit here, Jordan. Like the fact that he put in the work and was willing to go that extra mile, which has taken him a couple extra miles along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also, too, I think it's a testament to young players or players for me in your early 20s to go somewhere that you're going to play top football, but you're going to play. Like, I know nothing in life is certain, right? You can go to a club and maybe they could play three in the back and you might not suit the way that but you go to a place. Malmo in Sweden, it probably wasn't the most luxurious spot that Cornelius could land, but he was going to be in an environment where Malmo would try to win the league every year.
Top team in the league.
And he's going to play. Yeah. And then now, look, you get that off the back of that and get a bit of fortune that the first games that you're going to play for Canada are in Europe. Yeah. And he goes and he hits the ground running, John, and then now look at him.
Listen, I'm going to hit on a couple things here. One, first of all, you say Malmo, and we've both been to Scandinavia. The amount of scouts that are in Scandinavia from the continent searching for players is ridiculous. They're always scouting those leagues. That's one. Two, this is good business. Okay, let's talk about this. He goes from Vancouver to Malmo, gets I don't know, what is it, $500,000 to Vancouver. Malmo keeps him for a season. Half a season, whatever it may be.
I think it's 4.3 million pounds.
I mean, that is good business at the end of the day. And I'm sorry, everybody. I know we want to talk about the player, but this is also a business thing. Yeah. And these transactions, it'll all feed back to Vancouver. Vancouver gets money on the front end. They probably get a sell-on fee now. They're going to make some cash and then go about their business. Yeah.
I just wonder, though. You mentioned the Whitecaps. And the Whitecaps, well, they had a role to play here. I mean, Cornelius couldn't make his way into the Whitecaps team, at least on a reliable basis. Same thing goes for Theo Bair, two young Canadian players, both playing less than 40 games for the club. Like, can the Whitecaps or any club really understand what they have, especially with young Canadian players when they play less than 40 games? Like, isn't there a certain number of games, John, that is required to really understand what you have?
It's funny you say that. I always had a threshold of games for guys at TFC2 before I felt like they were really in a good spot. And that was somewhere between 40 and 60. Where I thought I'd be comfortable because I knew the nuances of what they were. I don't know what the situation was at Vancouver for these particular players and why they didn't fit or stick. You know, behind the scenes, you know, again, we talk business. I mean, there's X amount of spots on rosters in MLS. You know, if they're based on what they're doing and how they're contributing, who's coming in, who needs to be moved out, contracts expiring, they have to move guys on. Right. You know, in these cases, that maybe that's the business of this. Again, we're talking about development as well. And I think this tends to, for me, to go back to, are we developing guys the right way from, 14 to 18 to put them in good positions, to know that they've had 60-plus second-team games or they have enough in the tank to know what you're going to get out of them. And I don't know if we're there yet.
Well, just the impression that you get by Vancouver not having these two players, which would certainly, if they had them now, they'd certainly be better, and these players aren't old. They're young players. The impression might be that they gave up on them too early. And that's not to say they were great at that club, and maybe they've been late bloomers, and maybe they've hit some scenarios which have made them better players. But the impression that you're left with, especially when some of these Canadian MLS clubs don't play enough of their Canadian players. You don't see enough of these young players. Or you see too much of the young Canadian players that they're being put in a position with a losing team, right? So it's striking that right balance.
The turnaround's really quick. I'm curious to hear what John has to think about it. But for me, who's watched closely the MLS or just the Canadian teams, it seems like they're so eager to find a star, like quickly. And like if you don't show promise of being that star, then a season later or 20 games later, they're looking for someone else to come in. So instead of in certain places, we talk about even like Sweden, you take time to like build players up bit by bit to eventually hit a point where they're playing top-notch football. But it's patience that comes with it. For me, when I look at Vancouver Whitecaps, TFC, CF Montreal, it's difficult because you almost look at every season like you want to make the most out of that season and then move on.
Yeah, it gets difficult, Jordan, in a couple of ways. You know, these young kids coming up, they have people chirping in their ears, and at a certain point, they could leave the club before they get to the first team. So you have to kind of lock them in. So then you lock them in, and then they feel like, oh, I made it.
Yeah.
But at that point, you're also not giving them, you know, you have them locked in, and then there's no development plan sometimes. There is, but they don't. For me, it's not smartly developed. And that's what happens. You see a lot of guys who, you know, so much promise as a youth. They sign contracts with MLS teams, and then they kind of sputter out for a while, or they get left behind because, you know, they're not contributing in a way, or a coach has an opinion about them. And it's difficult. It happens at all these clubs.
Yeah, I mean, some Canadian players do hang on for a long time and make a career out of it, like Osorio at Toronto FC. Piet's been at CF Montreal for a long time. Russell Tybert seemed like he was at Vancouver Whitecaps forever. But, you know, with these two players, to see where they are right now, it's just like, did they give up on them a little bit too early?
But I wonder if the examples you brought, they're the exception and not the rule. Do you know
got
what
you.
I mean? Like,
Yes.
I feel like they're the ones that, oh, that's the one out of 100 that maybe go and make it.
I'll tell you what, you bring up Osorio, and for me, the mindset that he has is so different than any other young player that I've seen come through Toronto FC. His hunger, his ability to want to work and get better.
Sacrifice, man.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like that mentality and the way he went about it, he deserves what he's getting now, what he's getting paid, because he put the work in to get to that point. And that to me is the one thing that some of these young players are missing.
That debate will continue on when it comes to MLS teams. In the meantime, I mean, the French league is now become a must-watch for Canadians.
Yeah.
Jonathan David's still there, but we're not sure where he's going to go, whether Bombito will make a move or not. So good stuff we'll be watching on over the course of the upcoming season. We also should put a bookend on Canada, the under-20 team at the CONCACAF Championship. They failed to qualify for the World Cup. They got knocked out in the quarterfinal to a Panama side, which I just thought was superior to this Canada side. This was a controversial call. Like, this is ridiculous. Like, borderline penalty, but a sending off. I mean, there was a sending off that completely riled up the Canadian players, and it really just completely unraveled after that. Canada was able to get a goal back, like, within the next 10 minutes later, a man down. But the behavior on the field and conceding an extra time, it was a difficult look, Jordan. But on the balance of it, not just this game, but of the tournament, it's not Canada's failure to make the Under-20 World Cup that stands out to me. It's just how, and I want to say this politely, how average the team was.
Yeah.
Like, I just looked out there on the field, and there were some good players, but there were so many 6.5 out of 10, and not the 8.5 that you really need if you want to compete with the best teams in the region. What did you make of this group and some of the young players that we're looking to be the players that lead us, you know, to the future?
No, I would agree with you about the average comment as well. I would also think too that in our system that we focus so much on the men and women's national team at the top level, but like for me, it's always grassroots stuff. Like, how are you teaching the next generation? Do we have a style that we're implementing? Are they in a position to go and succeed? Are we looking for maybe a 9 or a 10? And like, I look at that, the U20s and crashing out, and that could happen in football, right? Where certain calls don't go your way, but just the playing style and the identity, like, what is that moving forward, John? And those are questions that I can go on for days about. Well, but that's what I really wanted to
I think
hit.
Jesse Marsch is going to be the lead on that. I think he's going to really have to take a hold of what they want to do here from youth soccer in this country, what they want to do with the youth national teams. I think a big thing for me is, you know, he's already said it. We got to get these kids better at younger ages. So, like, if I'm one of these kids, I'm 16 to 19. You know, what am I doing every day to get better? You know, what am I doing after training? What am I doing when I'm at home? Because there's going to be an opportunity here. Like, there's an opportunity for young Canadian players. Jesse Marsch is going to be looking at these guys, looking how they're going to progress. And I think you got to grab it. I mean, you talked about mentality. You just brought up Osorio. This is what I'm talking about. Like, what Canadian players are going to go out and put the work in, day out, to get their opportunities? Because there's going to be out there.
It's crazy what the changes that we've undergone over the course of the last decade or so. This program was put into place where young players, they don't play tournaments growing up anymore. They play festivals. Like, demeanor has something to do with it. Yes, developing her skill and the talent, but I looked on that field and I just don't see the technical ability either. So what's endgame here? Like, what are we doing? Where are we going? And why are we going this direction? You said Jesse Marsh is going to play a role. Like, this was supposed to be part of John Herdman's portfolio, but he passed it off to Andrew Olivieri. And now we need to see who's actually doing the work in this country. And it seems to me that more of that opportunity is coming through the League One structures. But even that needs to get younger to a certain degree. And there's other ways to develop young players. I just look at us being right now in between two spots.
Yeah.
And we need to pick a lane, and we need to decide which lane we're going to go down. Marsh is going to be busy. Marsh is not only the head coach of the men's national team, John. He's going to be looking after young players and hopefully setting things straight that way. He's working on sponsorship, bringing more people from a business perspective into the game. This is one man. You know, it's a huge responsibility.
Again, this is what he signed up for, but I'm going to ask both of you guys this question. What's more important to you from, say 16 to 19, 15 to 19? Results or development?
I think
it's an easy question. I think sorry.
Easy for me, yeah. It's absolutely development. And for me, when I look at it, when we talk about it, we mentioned League One, and I know they've implemented rules. Well, League One Ontario implemented rules to play younger players this year. But if I'm a 16-year-old, take my body, I'm 16, I'm going to the CPL and I'm playing, and I'm getting on one of the developmental contracts because you could play against grown men and develop your game. And I think we're going to get to a point. I know not everyone can do this, but you can get to a point maybe even if you're playing League One that you have feeder clubs trying to go into the CPL.
I don't think it has to be one or the other, though. Results matter. Results matter. Results are part of development for me.
Again, they do matter, 100%. You're absolutely right. But the problem is everybody and every coach is so concerned about the results because their job is, especially in youth development, okay? They're so concerned about them winning some tournament somewhere and getting a trophy to bring back home. Where for me, I think you need to be evaluating how many guys you pushing through. How many guys are actually playing first-team football that came through where you started coaching or where you started with that player? That, to me, is the most important.
Yeah.
And like, that's more than that trophy, that $5 trophy you get at the end of the tournament when you're 16 years old.
Your team, when you're 16, smashing other teams in a league that's not very competitive, get the setup right, get the structures right, so results can matter. You can develop in a competitive space. For me, until that structure is robust enough, John, then you're not getting the best of both worlds. And I think that you can. That is a goal, or that's what should be the goal. And for me, it's achievable because from what I see right now, we're not developing players that are technically better than the ones that have just come through. We've just seen a crop of players that have come through, and we see them in Major League Soccer in the CPL. Like, these are good players. What's that next group looking like? And COVID screwed up a whole lot of things, including that kind of development, but there was a lot of issues that need to be worked out. Good conversation. We'll continue that conversation on shows like One Soccer Today. Next episode upcoming on Thursday night, right here on One Soccer.